Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know who needs to hear this today, but listen to me. You are not broken beyond repair. You are not too lost to be found. You are not too weak to be made strong. I don't care what you've been through, what mistakes you've made, how many times you've fallen, because God's strength is bigger than your weakness. You see, life has a way of knocking you down. It'll break you, shake you, test you, and sometimes it'll make you feel like you ain't got nothing left to give. But let me tell you something. God is in the rebuilding business. When the world sees ruins, he sees restoration. When others see failure, he sees foundation. And when you feel empty, he's just making room for something greater. But here's the thing. You have to believe it. You have to trust that God is working even when you don't see it. You have to move like the victory is already won, because it is. The battle is not yours, it's the Lord's. That means no matter what comes against you, fear, doubt, pain, regret, it doesn't stand a chance against the power of God inside you. I know you've made mistakes. I know you've been hurt. But let me ask you, are you going to let your past define you? Are you going to let your failures keep you stuck? Or are you going to rise up, shake the dust off, and step into the future God has for you? Because hear me, the enemy wants to keep you distracted. He wants you stuck in your past, drowning in guilt, buried in shame, but that's not your destiny. Your destiny is strength. Your destiny is purpose. Your destiny is victory. And you don't get there by looking back. You get there by pressing forward, by trusting that God's power is working through you. So here's what you do. You pray like it's already done. You move like the breakthrough is already here. You live like God has already won the battle for you, because he has. You let go of the weight that's been holding you down, and you rise up, not in your own strength, but in God's. This ain't just motivation. This is truth. This is power. And it's yours if you're willing to walk in it. So get up, step forward, trust God, and rebuild yourself with his strength. Your past may have been filled with mistakes, pain, and regrets, but it does not hold the power to dictate where you are going. What happened before is a chapter, not the whole story. Too many people allow their past to shackle them, to convince them that they are unworthy of growth, of love, of a second chance. But that's a lie. Just because you fell doesn't mean you have to stay down. Just because you were broken doesn't mean you can't be restored. God's grace is greater than your past, and his plans are bigger than your failures. There are people who will try to remind you of who you used to be, of the things you did, of the times you got it wrong. The enemy will whisper that you're too far gone, that you've messed up too much to ever be redeemed. But the truth is, God specializes in transformation. He takes what is shattered and makes it whole. He takes what is discarded and makes it valuable. He takes the worst parts of your past and turns them into the very foundation of your testimony. Your mistakes were lessons, not life sentences. Every hardship, every misstep, every moment of weakness was not meant to destroy you, but to shape you. Growth doesn't come without struggle. Strength isn't built without resistance. And God doesn't call the perfect, he calls the willing. If you are willing to trust him, to move forward, to let go of the chains of yesterday, then you will see that your past was never meant to hold you back. It was meant to prepare you. The weight you carried, the burdens you bore, the pain you endured, it all becomes fuel for the person you are becoming. Failure is not the end of the road. It is simply a lesson along the journey. Too many people treat failure as a life sentence when, in reality, it is just a stepping stone. Every great success story is built on a foundation of setbacks, mistakes, and disappointments. Failure is not a signal to stop. It is a call to rise, to adjust, to grow. The greatest leaders, the most successful individuals, the strongest warriors, have all faced moments when they stumbled, when they lost, when they felt like giving up. But what separates them, God never promised an easy path. He never said you wouldn't fall, but He did promise that He would be there to lift you up. Every failure carries a lesson, a moment of reflection, an opportunity to gain wisdom and resilience. The world may judge you by your mistakes, but God sees beyond them. He sees what you are becoming, not just where you have been. In His hands, failure is not a destination, it is a process of refinement. Just as gold is purified through fire, you are strengthened through trials. The enemy wants you to believe that failure is final, that your mistakes disqualify you, that your shortcomings mean you are unworthy of another chance. But God's grace rewrites the story. When you fall, get back up. When you make a mistake, learn from it. When you feel defeated, remember that even the strongest warriors face battles. The difference between success and regret is the decision to keep going. What feels like an ending is often the beginning of something greater, something stronger, something God designed. Failure does not mean you are finished. It means you are in progress. Trials are not meant to destroy you. They are meant to strengthen you. When life throws challenges your way, it is easy to feel like you are being crushed under the weight of difficulty. But God does not allow hardship without purpose. He does not put you through the fire to leave you burned. He allows the fire to refine you, to shape you into the person you were created to be. Every challenge, every setback, every painful season is molding you, stretching you, and preparing you for something greater. Growth does not happen in comfort. Strength is not built in ease. A tree's roots grow deeper when the wind pushes against it. A diamond is formed under intense pressure. Gold is purified in fire. The same principle applies to your life. The struggles you face are not punishments, they are tools of transformation. God sees what you cannot see. He knows that without resistance, without trials, without obstacles, you would remain the same. He allows these moments not to break you, but to push you beyond what you thought possible. Pain has a way of revealing who you are. It strips away pride, forces you to lean on God, and teaches you lessons that success never could. When you are tested, your faith is strengthened. When you are challenged, your endurance grows. The enemy wants you to believe that hardship is a sign of God's absence, but it is often in those very moments that He is closest, guiding you, molding you, preparing you for the next chapter. What seems like a season of struggle is often a season of shaping. God is not breaking you. He is building you into something stronger than you ever imagined. In the quiet moments of struggle, when the weight of life feels unbearable, it is easy to believe that you are alone. The enemy wants you to think that no one sees your pain, that no one understands your battles, that even God has turned His back on you. But the truth is, God is right there with you, even when you cannot feel Him. Even when the darkness surrounds you, even when you think you have been forgotten, He is walking beside you. There is no valley too deep, no storm too fierce, no night too long that He will not walk through it with you. His presence is not dependent on your emotions. It is not dictated by your circumstances. He is the God who stood with Daniel in the lion's den, the God who walked with the 3 men in the fire, the God who strengthened David when he faced Goliath. He is the same God today, and He has never left your side. When life becomes overwhelming, it is not a sign that God has abandoned you. It is often when He is carrying you. The silence does not mean absence. The darkness does not mean defeat. Sometimes the greatest work is done in the unseen, in the waiting, in the moments where faith is tested the most. God does not promise an easy path, but He does promise His presence. He goes before you, He stands beside you, and He fights for you. Even in the moments when you feel weak, He is your strength. Even in the moments when you feel lost, He is your guide. And even when the world turns its back on you, He never will. Faith is the most powerful weapon you have, even when everything around you is telling you to give up. Life will test you. It will push you to the edge, make you question your path, and tempt you to surrender to fear. But faith is the anchor that holds you steady in the storm. It is the fire that refuses to be extinguished, the unshakable belief that God is still working, even when you cannot see the outcome. The world will tell you to quit when things get hard. People will doubt you, circumstances will discourage you, and the enemy will whisper that it is easier to walk away. But faith demands that you stand firm, that you keep moving forward even when the road is uncertain. Faith is not just believing when everything is going well, it is trusting when everything is falling apart. It is declaring victory when defeat seems inevitable. It is holding on to God's promises when nothing around you makes sense. Every great story of triumph began with faith that refused to waver. Noah built the ark before the rain came. Abraham believed in the promise before he saw it fulfilled. David faced Goliath with nothing but a slingshot and trust in God. Their circumstances screamed defeat, but their faith declared victory. That same faith is available to you. The enemy cannot defeat a person who refuses to stop believing. Faith disarms fear. It silences doubt. It moves mountains. When the world tells you to let go, faith tells you to hold on, not because of your strength, but because of the one who holds you. God has never failed, and he will not start now. Trust him, stand firm, and let your faith be your weapon. Strength is not built in a single moment. It is forged through daily habits, through discipline, through consistency. Just like a muscle grows through repeated effort, your spiritual and mental strength develop through persistent action. It is not enough to pray once and expect transformation. It is not enough to believe for a day and expect unshakable faith. Growth comes from showing up every single day, even when you do not feel like it, even when progress seems slow, even when no one is watching. Discipline is choosing what you need over what you want. It is waking up to pray when you would rather sleep. It is opening your Bible when distractions call your name. It is training your mind to focus on faith instead of fear, on truth instead of lies. It is resisting temptation not just once, but every time it arises. Discipline is the foundation of spiritual endurance, and consistency is what makes it unbreakable. The greatest warriors are not the ones who fight once and win. They are the ones who train daily, who sharpen their skills, who prepare even when there is no immediate battle. In the same way, your faith and mental strength are built in the moments when no one is watching, in the decisions you make when no one is there to applaud you. The small choices you make every day determine the strength you will have when challenges arise. You cannot expect strength without effort. You cannot expect endurance without persistence. Spiritual and mental resilience are not given, they are developed. The more you discipline yourself in the things of God, the stronger you become. The more consistent you are in your walk, the more unshakable your faith and mind become. Strength is not found in occasional effort, it is found in the unwavering commitment to grow. Prayer is not just a routine or a ritual, it is a direct conversation with God, a lifeline that connects you to his power, wisdom, and presence. It is not reserved for emergencies or special occasions. It is meant to be a daily practice, a constant communication that strengthens your spirit and aligns your heart with his will. Just as you cannot build a strong relationship without regular conversation, you cannot develop a deep connection with God without consistent prayer. Life is full of noise, distractions, worries, challenges, but prayer cuts through all of it and brings you into the presence of God. It is where burdens are lifted, where peace replaces anxiety, where guidance is given. When you pray, you are not just speaking into the air, you are speaking to the creator of the universe, the one who holds all things in his hands. He hears every word, sees every tear, understands every struggle. There is no problem too big or too small for him, no request too insignificant. Prayer is also a weapon. It fights battles you cannot see. It strengthens you for the challenges ahead. It shifts situations in ways you may never fully understand. When you pray, you are not just asking, you are inviting God to move, to intervene, to lead. A day without prayer is a day without power. It is through prayer that your faith is reinforced, your spirit is renewed, and your mind is refocused. Prayer is not about perfect words. It is about an open heart. It is about trust, surrender, and dependence on the one who knows what you need before you even ask. The more you pray, the stronger your relationship with God becomes. The more consistent you are, the more you will see His hand in every area of your life. Forgiveness is not about excusing what was done to you. It is about freeing yourself from the weight of what happened. Holding on to resentment does not hurt the person who wronged you. It traps you in a cycle of pain, bitterness, and regret. The longer you hold on to the past, the heavier it becomes, slowing you down, clouding your mind, and keeping you from moving into the future God has for you. Forgiveness is not weakness, it is strength. It is making the decision that your peace is more important than your pain. God calls us to forgive, not because the other person deserves it, but because we deserve to be free. When you hold on to past wounds, you chain yourself to moments that no longer serve you. You relive the hurt, you carry the anger, and you allow what happened to dictate your future. But forgiveness is the key that unlocks the door to healing. It is not saying that what happened was right. It is choosing not to let it control you anymore. Forgiveness is also a reflection of God's grace. Just as He forgives us, He asks us to do the same for others. It is not always easy, and sometimes it feels impossible. But true forgiveness is a choice, not a feeling. It is deciding every day to release, to surrender, to trust that God will bring justice in His own time. It does not mean forgetting, but it does mean letting go of the hold it has over your life. The past cannot be changed, but your future is still being written. When you release what was, you make room for what will be. Forgiveness is not for them, it is for you. It is how you step forward, lighter, freer, and ready for what God has next. God does not choose people based on their qualifications, experience, or perfection. He calls those who are willing, and then He equips them for the journey ahead. Too often, people disqualify themselves because they feel unworthy, unprepared, or unequipped for what God is calling them to do. But throughout history, God has used the unlikely, the broken, the imperfect to accomplish great things. He does not look for those who have everything figured out. He looks for those who are willing to trust Him. Moses had a speech problem, yet God called him to lead a nation. David was just a shepherd boy, yet God anointed him as king. Peter was impulsive and flawed, yet God built His church upon him. None of these people were perfect, yet God saw something in them that they could not see in themselves. He does not wait for people to be ready. He calls them in their weakness and then strengthens them for the mission ahead. God's power is made perfect in weakness. He does not need your perfection. He needs your obedience. If you are waiting to be good enough before stepping into your purpose, you will be waiting forever. The enemy wants you to believe that you are not ready, that you are not smart enough, strong enough, or holy enough. But God sees past your insecurities and shortcomings. When He calls you, He provides what you need. When God places a calling on your life, He will equip you with everything required to fulfill it. He will open doors, provide wisdom, and strengthen you for the journey. Your past does not disqualify you, and your flaws do not limit you. If God has called you, He will make sure you have everything you need to walk in His purpose. Nothing in your life is accidental. Not your struggles, not your pain, not even the moments you wish had never happened. God does not waste anything. Every hardship, every setback, Every tear you have shed is part of a bigger plan, a purpose that may not make sense in the moment, but is shaping you for something greater. When life feels overwhelming, it is easy to believe that your pain is pointless, that your suffering is in vain. But God is always working behind the scenes, turning what was meant for harm into something powerful. Pain has a way of refining you, teaching you, strengthening you in ways comfort never could. It stretches your faith, deepens your dependence on God, and prepares you for a future that requires resilience. The very thing you are struggling with today could be the testimony that helps someone else tomorrow. God does not just bring you through the fire, He uses it to mold you into the person He created you to be. The trials you face are not signs of His absence. They are proof that He is preparing you for something greater. Think of Joseph, betrayed, sold into slavery, imprisoned for years. It seemed like everything was against him. But in the end, he was elevated to a position of power that allowed him to save countless lives, including those who had wronged him. What seemed like meaningless suffering was actually God positioning him for His destiny. You may not see the purpose in your pain right now, but that does not mean it is not there. Trust that God is using even your hardest moments to shape you, to guide you, and to prepare you for something beyond what you can imagine. The struggle is not the end of your story. It is the foundation of something greater. People will judge you based on what they see on the surface, your background, your past mistakes, your weaknesses. But God looks deeper. He sees what others overlook. He sees your heart, your resilience, your potential. The world may dismiss you, telling you that you are not qualified, not talented enough, not important enough. But God does not operate by human standards. He does not call the strongest or the most impressive by the world's definition. He calls those who are willing, those who are faithful, those who trust in Him even when the odds are against them. David was just a shepherd boy when God chose him to be king. His own family did not see his potential. When the prophet Samuel came looking for Israel's next leader, David's father did not even bring him forward, but God saw what no one else did, a heart after His own. The same is true for you. Others may count you out, but God has already counted you in. The enemy will try to convince you that you are not enough, that your voice does not matter, that you will never rise above your struggles. But God has placed something inside of you that the world cannot take away. He sees the gifts you have yet to discover, the strength you have yet to tap into, the purpose that is unfolding even when you cannot see it. Do not let the opinions of others define you. Do not let the world's labels limit what God has spoken over your life. If He has called you, He will equip you. If He has chosen you, nothing can stand in the way of His plan. Others may underestimate you, but the one who created you knows exactly what you are capable of. The people you surround yourself with have a direct impact on your faith, your mindset, and your growth. If you walk with those who constantly speak doubt, negativity, and fear, it will slowly weaken your spirit. But if you surround yourself with people who uplift you, who remind you of God's promises, who encourage you when times get tough, your faith will grow stronger. The right people will push you closer to God, not pull you away. Faith is not meant to be walked alone. Even Jesus had His disciples, people who supported one another, prayed together, and stood by each other in times of trial. Who you allow into your life matters. There will always be people who drain you, who discourage you, who make you question your worth. But there will also be those who inspire you, who speak life into you, who remind you of God's power when you start to forget. These are the people you need to keep close. The Bible says, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. When you surround yourself with strong, faithful individuals, you sharpen each other. You lift each other up when one is weak. You remind each other of God's goodness in difficult seasons. You hold each other accountable to stay on the right path. Life is full of challenges, but when you walk with people who share your faith, you do not have to face those challenges alone. Be intentional about the company you keep. Seek friendships that push you to pray more, to believe more, to trust God more. Surround yourself with people who see the greatness God has placed in you, who celebrate your victories, and who stand with you through every trial. The right people will help you grow into everything God has called you to be. Obedience to God is not always easy, especially when His instructions do not make sense in the moment. Sometimes He asks you to wait when you are ready to move. Other times, He pushes you forward when you feel unprepared. But every act of obedience is a step toward breakthrough. God's ways are higher than ours, and His timing is always perfect. When you trust Him, even when you do not understand, He opens doors that no one can shut. Many times in Scripture, obedience led to miraculous breakthroughs. When Joshua and the Israelites marched around Jericho, the walls did not fall immediately. They had to keep walking, keep obeying, even when nothing seemed to be happening. But on the seventh day, after their obedience was complete, the walls came crashing down. When Peter had been fishing all night without success, Jesus told him to cast his net one more time. It made no logical sense, but Peter obeyed, and his net overflowed with fish. Your breakthrough is often on the other side of obedience. But obedience requires trust. Trust in God's plan, trust in His timing, trust that He sees what you cannot see. Delays are not denials. Just because you do not see movement does not mean God is not working. Sometimes He is preparing the blessing. Other times He is preparing you. Impatience can lead to missed opportunities, but trust leads to victory. If God is asking you to wait, it is because He is setting things in order. If He is asking you to step out in faith, it is because He has already made the way. Obedience is not always comfortable, but it is always worth it. When you walk in obedience, you position yourself for the breakthrough He has already planned. Your past does not disqualify you from the future God has planned. Mistakes, failures, and regrets may try to convince you that you are beyond redemption, but God's promises are not dependent on your perfection. They are built on His grace. The enemy wants you to believe that your past defines you, that your failures are final, but God's word says otherwise. His love is greater than your mistakes, His mercy is deeper than your regrets, and His plans for you have not changed. Look at the people God used in the Bible. Moses was a murderer, yet God chose him to lead His people. David committed adultery, yet he remained a man after God's own heart. Peter denied Jesus 3 times, yet he became a pillar of the early church. Their mistakes were not the end of their story, because God's grace rewrote their future. The same grace is available to you. What you have done does not change what God has spoken over your life. God does not call the perfect, He calls the willing. If your heart is open, if you are willing to turn to Him, He will restore what was lost, rebuild what was broken, and lead you into the purpose He has prepared for you. Nothing you have done can cancel His plans. His love is unwavering, His mercy is unending, and His purpose for you remains. You are not defined by where you have been, but by where God is taking you. Do not let shame or guilt keep you from stepping into His promises. He is a God of second chances, of new beginnings, of restoration. The past may remind you of where you have been, but it does not dictate where God is leading you next. Faith and fear cannot rule your heart at the same time. One will always overpower the other. If your life is built on fear, fear of failure, fear of the unknown, fear of what others think, you will always feel unstable, always questioning, always doubting. Fear will keep you from stepping into the fullness of what God has planned for you. But when your foundation is faith, you stand firm no matter what comes your way. Faith is what allows you to trust God even when the path is unclear, even when the storm is raging, even when everything in you wants to give up. Fear whispers that you are not enough, that the obstacles are too great, that you should turn back. But faith declares that God is greater, that He is with you, that nothing is impossible for Him. The Bible says that a house built on sand will collapse when the storms come, but a house built on rock will stand. That rock is faith, faith in God's promises, faith in His goodness, faith in His timing. Life will test you, trials will come, but if your trust is in God, you will not be shaken. Faith does not mean you will never feel afraid. It means you choose to believe God is bigger than your fear. It means stepping forward even when you do not have all the answers, trusting that He will make a way. The enemy wants you to build your life on fear because he knows fear paralyzes you. But God calls you to build your life on faith because faith moves mountains. When you choose faith over fear, you are choosing to stand on an unshakable foundation, one that will carry you through every season, every challenge, and every victory. Adversity is not meant to break you, it is meant to reveal what is inside of you. Strength is not developed in comfort, it is forged in struggle, in perseverance, in the moments when giving up seems like the easier option. When you face hardships, you have a choice to run from them or to grow through them. Growth requires resistance, just as muscles only become stronger when they are pushed beyond their limits. Every challenge you face is an opportunity to become wiser, stronger, and more resilient. Difficult seasons show you what you are truly made of. When everything is easy, faith is simple, confidence is high, and determination is steady. But when adversity comes, that is when your true character is tested. Will you crumble under pressure, or will you rise? Will you let hardships define you, or will you use them to refine you? God allows trials not to destroy you, but to strengthen you. He knows what is inside of you, even when you do not. He knows your capacity, your endurance, and your ability to overcome. Some of the greatest victories in life are birthed from seasons of struggle. Joseph endured betrayal, slavery, and imprisonment before stepping into his destiny. Job lost everything before God restored him. Paul faced beatings, imprisonment, and shipwrecks. Yet his faith never wavered. They did not run from adversity, they grew from it. And because of that, they stepped into something greater. Your trials are not the end of your story, they are the training ground for what is coming next. Every struggle is an opportunity to trust God more, to become stronger, to develop the endurance needed for the path ahead. Do not fear adversity. Face it, learn from it, and let it shape you into the person God created you to be. Weakness is not something to be ashamed of. It is an opportunity for God to show His power in your life. The world tells you to rely on your own strength, to push through, to never show vulnerability. But God operates differently. He does not ask you to be perfect or self-sufficient. He asks you to surrender, to trust, to lean on Him when you feel like you have nothing left. It is in those moments when you have reached the end of yourself that His strength is revealed in ways you never imagined. Paul understood this truth deeply. He had a thorn in the flesh, a weakness he prayed for God to remove. But instead of taking it away, God responded, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Paul then declared that he would boast in his weaknesses because it was through them that Christ's power rested upon him. The very thing he saw as a limitation became the very thing that allowed God's strength to shine through. When you feel weak, when you feel like you cannot go on, that is the moment when God steps in. His strength carries you when yours fails. His wisdom guides you when you are lost. His peace sustains you when everything around you is chaotic. Your weakness is not a setback. It is an invitation for God to move. God does not need you to be the strongest, the smartest, or the most capable. He simply needs you to trust Him. The less you rely on yourself, the more you can rely on Him. And when you do, you will find that His strength is always enough. His grace is always sufficient. And His power will always carry you through. Your mind is a battlefield, and the way you think will determine the direction of your life. If you constantly dwell on failure, fear, and defeat, you will find yourself stuck, unable to move forward. But when you adopt a mindset of victory, when you believe that God is working for you and not against you, your circumstances begin to shift. What you focus on grows. If you focus on obstacles, they will seem insurmountable. If you focus on God's promises, you will find the strength to overcome anything. The Bible says, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Your thoughts shape your reality. If you see yourself as defeated, you will walk in defeat. If you see yourself as victorious through Christ, you will step into victory. This is not about ignoring challenges or pretending everything is easy. It is about choosing faith over fear, confidence over doubt, and hope over despair. The enemy wants to keep you trapped in a negative mindset because he knows that once you start thinking differently, you will start living differently. David faced Goliath with a mindset of victory. The entire army saw an undefeatable giant, but David saw an opportunity for God's power to be revealed. His mindset changed the outcome. He did not let fear dictate his actions. He let faith lead the way. That same mindset is available to you. Do not allow past failures, negative voices, or temporary struggles to convince you that you cannot win. Shift your thinking. See yourself as God sees you, strong, capable, and victorious. Speak life over your situation. Trust that God is in control, and walk forward with the confidence that no obstacle is greater than the God who fights for you. Faith is not just believing, it is acting on that belief. You can pray for a breakthrough, but if you are unwilling to move when God tells you to, you are not walking in faith. Faith without works is dead, because true faith requires action. It is trusting God enough to step forward, even when you cannot see the whole picture. It is believing that He will provide, but still working diligently toward the doors He is opening. Noah built the ark before a single drop of rain fell. Abraham left his homeland before knowing where God was leading him. Peter stepped out of the boat before he knew he could walk on water. In every case, faith required action. If Noah had waited for rain before building, he would have been too late. If Abraham had hesitated, he would have missed his calling. If Peter had stayed in the boat, he would have never experienced the miraculous. God moves when you move in obedience. You cannot just wish for change. You must take the steps necessary to receive what God has in store. If you are believing for a new opportunity, prepare yourself for it. If you are asking God for healing, take the steps toward restoration. If you are praying for a breakthrough, be ready to act when God opens the door. Faith is not passive, it is active. Many people wait for perfect conditions before they act, but faith steps forward despite uncertainty. God will not always show you the whole path, but He asks you to trust Him enough to take the first step. When you combine faith with action, you align yourself with God's will, and that is when doors open, mountains move, and miracles happen. Humility keeps you grounded, gratitude keeps you joyful, and giving God the glory keeps you aligned with His purpose. No matter how successful, strong, or blessed you become, never forget the one who made it possible. Pride convinces you that you have achieved things on your own, but humility reminds you that every good thing comes from God. When you stay humble, you remain teachable, open to growth, and aware that without God's grace, you would not be where you are. Gratitude shifts your focus from what is missing to what is present. It reminds you that even in difficult seasons, there is always something to be thankful for. A heart filled with gratitude does not complain, does not envy, and does not take blessings for granted. It sees God's hand in every detail, from the smallest provision to the greatest miracle. When you are grateful, you recognize that what you have is not by accident. It is a gift from God. Giving God the glory ensures that your heart stays in the right place. Everything you achieve, every obstacle you overcome, every door that opens, it is all because of Him. When you acknowledge His hand in your life, you keep yourself from falling into self-reliance. You understand that your success is not just for you, but for His purpose. When you give God the glory, you inspire others to see His goodness, and you remind yourself that your journey is part of a greater plan. Stay humble so pride does not lead you astray. Stay grateful so bitterness does not take root. Always give God the glory so you never lose sight of who is truly in control. These three principles will keep you walking in His favor and aligned with His calling, no matter where you have been, what you have faced, or how many times you have fallen. God's power is greater than your past. His purpose is bigger than your pain, and His strength is made perfect in your weakness. Rebuilding yourself with God's strength is not about being perfect. It is about surrendering, trusting, and stepping forward even when the road is uncertain. Faith without action is empty, and a strong foundation cannot be built on fear. You must choose to rise, to grow, and to believe that God has more for you. Your trials are not meant to break you, they are meant to refine you. Your past does not cancel God's promises, it prepares you for them. Every setback, every failure, and every challenge is an opportunity for God to move, to restore, and to elevate you. When you build your life on faith, stay humble, remain grateful, and walk in obedience, nothing can stop what God has ordained for you. God does not call the qualified, He qualifies the called. He does not leave you in the dark, He walks with you through it. He does not waste your pain, He transforms it into purpose. No matter how many times life knocks you down, get up, keep praying, keep believing, keep moving. Your breakthrough is on the other side of your faith, your persistence, and your willingness to trust God's timing. This is your moment to rebuild, not in your own strength, but in His. Stand firm, step forward, and walk in the power of the one who has already declared victory over your life.